Today we'll be kicking off season number 1 of the Kansas Jayhawks Dynasty on EA College Football 25. In this episode, we're going to start things off at home, facing off against the Middle Tennessee State Blue Raiders. We'll be going through both Week 0 and Week 1, talking about our current recruiting situation and how we're going to navigate for many of these players on our board. We're also going to be going through many of the noteworthy games across the country, trying to follow as much of the college football season as we can. I think it's going to be a real challenge recruiting with Kansas because there are not many prospects around the country who have any interest in coming to our school. Only one prospect has us in first, and only 3 have us in the top 5. Along with that, there isn't a ton of talent in state. I want to recruit really well within the state of Kansas, but it's going to be hard because there aren't many great prospects. I do like this 3-star athlete, Clyde Poole. He's probably going to be a quarterback. And then 4-star Jazir Tolbert is the top player in this state. Along with those two, we've got some other highly ranked players who aren't super interested in our school, but I figured it's worth a shot. We're going to take some other guys off the board, though, who aren't super interested. I want to focus on the really good prospects who don't have interest, or lesser prospects who do have interest or don't have scholarships from any other school. This way we can be these players' first scholarships and we will have the leg up in terms of recruiting them. I want to have a full recruiting board to start the season of 35 players. It might feel like a lot, but I want to be able to get as much of a quantity of prospects as we can to start the year. In terms of some of these top guys, we're going to look to be getting their interests right away. For the prospects who I want the most, I'm going to send the house. For some of the other prospects, we're going to put less resources into them, but obviously we're still going to prioritize them to the best of our abilities because, again, I want to get a lot of these guys as quick as possible because recruiting can be ruthless in this game. All it takes is one big program to swoop in and steal your target, so I want to be strategic with how I offer up my hours. A position group I'm really fascinated by is these 3 defensive ends. Jennings, Bieria, and Logan. They're all gems. They're all really good. Jennings in particular because he's an in-state kid. I want to have as many homegrown players as possible, so Seth Jennings is definitely a guy who we prioritize a lot. Other than that, our Week 0 recruiting wasn't all that exciting. I think it's going to get more interesting over the next couple of weeks as these battles start to heat up. Many prospects are starting to narrow down their list to 8 schools, and that includes 4-star athlete George Shembo, who's a top 100 prospect in the country. He's a quarterback. There's only 2 teams who have offered scholarships. We're one of them, and it seems like he's pretty interested in our school. The problem is the other team in the running, who is currently the favorite, is Alabama. It's going to be pretty hard to land him, but I'm going to try. Some of these receivers I'm super interested in. Dorian Pepper, I want to put more focus into him. He's a 3-star, but I think he's really talented, and I want to make sure we get him early in the season, given how big of a need receiver is. And then with these 4-star quarterbacks, it's going to be a challenge to get either Darian Thrasher or George Shembo, given the other really good schools in the running. I'm going to take Thrasher off my list because he has 4 other scholarships. I think there's pretty much no way we get him. At least with a guy like Shembo, he only has 1 other scholarship, that being from Alabama. So I wanted to add another quarterback on the board, DeAndre Rainbolt, and he ends up being a gem, but I don't think he's better than Clyde Poole. Poole has a stronger arm, he's faster, and he's a little bit more accurate as well. So maybe we do end up landing Rainbolt, but Clyde Poole will be my priority between the 2 of them. And Poole, especially being an in-state guy and the only prospect in the entire country who has us as his top school, he's a guy who I'd like to get sooner than later. In terms of some of the new players I've added to the board, I really want to focus on this defensive tackle, Afia Keano. Not a ton of interest in him. I think he could be a pretty good player. I'm going to put less time into Philip Olawale. He's a receiver. We're the only school who's really in the battle for him, and I think some of these other receivers are better. And I also want to put more focus into Ben Bieria because I think he's a really talented player, and it's going to be hard getting all of these defensive ends. With Angel Logan, LSU seems to be very interested in him, so that's going to be a hard battle for us to win. Going into the year, we had like 6 or 7 quarterbacks on the board. We're already down to 3, and one of them's probably going to go to Alabama, so it's going to be a real challenge. Before we hop into our Week 1 game against Middle Tennessee State, let's briefly go over Week 0 around the rest of the country. There wasn't a ton to talk about because there was only 4 games. I do want to look at the preseason top 25. They have us as the 21st ranked team in the country, which I believe is 5th amongst the Big 12. Our conference is expected to be very competitive this year. As for the Heisman Watch, speaking of the Big 12, 3 players here with Ollie Gordon, Shedeur Sanders, and Travis Hunter. The preseason All-American teams with no shortage of Big 12 talent, including Ollie Gordon, Travis Hunter, and Tesitoya McMillan on the first team. The second team, meanwhile, has 6 players from the University of Oregon, including their starting quarterback, Dylan Gabriel. As for the all-conference team, on the first team, we've got our star running back, Devin Neal, joined by a pair of players in the secondary with Kobe Bryant and Marvin Grant. The second team is led by quarterback Jalen Daniels. He's paired up with left guard Michael Ford Jr. and cornerback Mello Dotson. So let's now go through some of the notable games in week 0, or I guess I should say notable games, since obviously the headliner here is number 11, Florida State, facing off against Georgia Tech in Dublin. The Seminoles have a lot to prove after not making the college football playoff last year despite finishing undefeated, but Georgia Tech put a damper in their plans, and we've got a week 0 upset. The Yellow Jackets win this one 37-29 with a Heisman-esque performance from wide receiver Christian Leary. Doing the pose in the end zone, he had 9 catches for $165, while starting quarterback Haynes King threw nearly 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. DJ Uiagalelei was pretty solid in his Florida State debut, but did not do enough to get the win. Certainly not a great start to the year for the Seminoles, as not only are they losing their first game of the season, but it's an in-conference game as well, so they're going to have some ground to make up pretty early into the season. As I mentioned, there were only 3 other games. We've got an FCS win. FCS Northwest beats New Mexico, while SMU wins their first game as a member of the ACC. No change into the top 25. Florida State will stay at 11, but I imagine they're going to move down regardless if they win next week. And we've got some big games here in week 1. LSU against USC in Las Vegas. Clemson versus Georgia. Miami versus Florida. Notre Dame heads to Kyle Field to face off against the Texas A&M Aggies. Penn State heads to Morgantown to face off against West Virginia. And of course, our game hosting Middle Tennessee State to open up the season. Before we get started, I do briefly want to go through our red shirts. We are going to be redshirting a number of players to try to keep their eligibility, considering the amount of upperclassmen we have on the roster. So most of our young guys, most of our true freshmen ended up getting redshirted, with the exception of Dekias Brinkley and Damani Maxon. I'm going to play both of these guys over the first 4 games of the year and determine if I feel like I want to redshirt them or if I think they're good enough to continue to play. This includes Isaiah Marshall, the young quarterback, who could end up being our starter next year if we don't add anybody better through recruiting or the transfer portal. He will certainly get some playing time this year, but I want him to have as much eligibility as possible. Let's take a look at Middle Tennessee State, a 1.5-star school from the Conference USA, led by quarterback Nicholas Vasciato. He is an 81 overall redshirt junior. He's one of the better Group 5 quarterbacks across the country, and if he has a good season this year, I could see him entering the portal for a Power 5 team who needs a quarterback, like, say, us? So we're certainly going to keep an eye on him, given that he could be a target for our team going into next year with Jalen Daniels gone. So let's get this show on the road. Week 1 of the 2024 season is here for the Kansas Jayhawks Dynasty. A huge season for the Jayhawks, a team in the Big 12 with college football playoff aspirations. And they want to get things started off right here at David Booth Memorial Stadium against Middle Tennessee State. These guys are not to be taken lightly, though. They're a talented team. They've got a good quarterback, and I think this could be a pretty fun game. As this one is underway, and this one will go for a touchback in the end zone, and we take our first look at the Kansas offense. However far this team goes will be dictated by their backfield. Running back Devin Neal and quarterback Jalen Daniels lead the way. 2 of the most dynamic players in college football, as it's an option. Daniels keeps it here on 3rd and inches. Whoop! Whoop! Jukes out 2 defenders. What a run for Jalen Daniels. He gets 22 yards. And is out of bounds, but not before getting a huge first down conversion. That's going to be the type of explosive offensive plays that we're going to see this year from this team. On first down, Devin Neal to the outside. He gets a big run for around 12 as he's wrapped up at around the 31-yard line. Quick start here in the opening minutes of this possession for Kansas. Following play action. Daniels looking downfield for the senior tight end, Jared Casey, and he gets around 25. Kansas is now quickly in the red zone, looking to punch it in here on 3rd and goal from around the half-yard line. It's a handoff. Devin Neal is not in. Middle Tennessee State with the stop, and when you're that close, you gotta go for it. 4th and inches. The offense will stay out on the field. Grimm in motion. Fake handoff. Over to Neal. He's in for the score. High stepping into the end zone for a Kansas touchdown. Devin Neal puts the crown on himself, and the Jayhawks take a 7-0 lead. A quick first drive here for Kansas, and it wasn't always perfect. We needed a 4th down conversion, but we're able to march down the field. The run game looking ultra effective. Both Daniels and Neal with some huge plays on the ground, finished off by a 1-yard scamper from Devin Neal. Let's take our first look at the Middle Tennessee State offense. They've got some talented players here. Along with Vasciato, they have a really good tight end with Holden Miller and a talented young running back with Frank Pleasant. 3rd and 6, 5 to go in the quarter. Vasciato throws it up for Amari Kelly, who takes a pop, but not before hanging on for the first down past midfield. Now 3rd and 5, they go on the ground. Brian Bruton, the backup running back, is there with the first down, quickly wrapped up by Taiwan Berryhill Jr., but not before getting the conversion. And Middle Tennessee State now has it in the red zone. Their offense is looking good, and they're moving quickly. Short throw here, caught by Ryan Horskamp, who throws Caleb Purdy off of him, and is wrapped up in the end zone for a touchdown. And this game is tied at 7. Or is it? I don't think he was in the end zone when he got tackled. We're going to throw the challenge flag here, and I understand the argument that this might be a silly challenge because it only saves half a yard, but he very clearly was not in the end zone, so I think it's a pretty easy call to make here, and at the very least, at least make him work to get in the end zone and tie the game. Don't let it be easy. 1st and goal. Pleasant hit in the backfield for a loss of 3 by Devin Dye, number 11, the starting free safety. It looks like we will, in fact, make him work. 2nd and goal. Short throw is broken up, incomplete, with a huge hit by the senior safety, Marvin Grant. 3rd and goal. Vasciato looks to throw it under a lot of pressure, and he will have to throw it away. So clearly challenging the spot of the ball on the initial touchdown ended up being a great decision for Kansas. 21-yard field goal try is up, and it's no good! He missed it! A chip shot goes wide to the right, and this game remains 7-0. The decision to challenge the touchdown ends up being a 7-point swing in favor of the Jayhawks. What a great coaching decision from the new head coach, Puma Whitlock, in his first game as the head coach of the Jayhawks. And they'll get the ball back still with the lead. Up the middle, Devin Neal hurdles the defender with a huge first down run. Quick start for Neal. He's got 33 and a touchdown. Play action. Daniels goes short. It's the senior receiver, Lawrence Arnold, with the juke move. He gets the first down, and he's out of bounds. That'll wrap up an interesting first quarter. Really good start for the Kansas offense. They're moving it down the field effortlessly. The defense on their initial drive did not look so good. Middle Tennessee State brought it all the way to the half-yard line, but the decision to challenge the touchdown and missing the field goal keep them off the board. Daniels under pressure, connects with Savion Morrison. He gets it to around the 14-yard line. A few plays later, it's a 4th and inches at the 4, and again, when you're this close, punch it in and go for it. Devin Neal up the middle, does not get the touchdown, but he only gets a yard or two, which is all he needs to keep the chains moving. 1st and goal now for the Jayhawks. We'll see if they can extend the lead. Daniels keeps it on the option, and he's in for the touchdown. Jalen Daniels with the rushing score, his first of the year. Mom, get the camera. He's doing the gritty. And Kansas leads it 14-0. Both Devin Neal and Jalen Daniels with rushing touchdowns in the first half between the two of them. This offense has ran the ball down Middle Tennessee State's throats so far. Daniels and Neal have been dotting them up on the ground. And now Middle Tennessee State's offense has to respond. They had a really good drive previously, but they didn't score. And now being down by 14, they've got some catch-up to do quickly. Frank Pleasant to the right side, breaks the tackle from Wheeler, and is eventually going to be wrapped up at around the 30 by Devin Dye, but not before getting a huge gain on the ground. 2nd and 7. Vasciato looks for the sideline, and it's caught by Hayes Sutton, who's open for the first down. Middle Tennessee State's offense continues to move the ball down the field really nicely, as it's an RPO handoff for Pleasant, and he is smothered in the backfield. There's a nice play from the defense. It's Caleb Taylor, the big defensive tackle, who brings him down, and that'll make it a 3rd and 10. Vasciato looks to throw it. Under pressure, he is sacked. Jeremy Robinson, the senior defensive end, leads the way. He's joined in the backfield as well by Caleb Taylor, and that'll stall the possession for the Blue Raiders, and they'll have to punt it away. Everybody on the defensive line was in the backfield there by the end of that play, but it was Robinson who initially won the rep, getting the early pressure, bringing him down with the sack, and Kansas gets it back, looking to add to their lead, already up 14-0. Daniels with it on the run here on 3rd and 2, goes short for Grimm, gets by a defender, and a huge gain after the catch by the senior Luke Grimm. Got to give the offensive line a ton of credit there for giving Daniels all that time to throw it. Here is Daniel Highshaw Jr. with a juke move. He gets a big run to the left side inside the 35. It's not just Daniels and Neal. Everybody is making plays on the ground. Morrison's had some nice plays. Highshaw with the big run there. Up the middle, RPO. It's caught by Lawrence Arnold. Kansas is back in the red zone. They're looking to add to their already nice lead. After the 2-minute warning on 1st down, Daniels rolls to the left side. That ball's out. It's a fumble, and it's picked up by the defense. Finally, Middle Tennessee State gets a break to go their way. Devin Curtis with the force. Jalen Jackson recovers, but now they've got to make a play here on 3rd and 3. Fasciato looks short for the running back, and the ball is jarred out. It's incomplete. So the defense comes up with the stop, and now the offense gets it back, looking to add to their lead with not a lot of time left in the half. Devin Neal on the screen gets by multiple defenders. He gets the first down inside the 35, and that'll keep the chains moving. 3rd and 2 now, 44 seconds left. It's a handoff for Neal to the left side. Big run here for Devin Neal. Tries to hurdle another defender, and he gets it to around the 15-yard line. His clock continues to tick, though. 2nd and 4, still with all 3 timeouts. Daniels rolls up the middle, and he's just not quite in. Brings it to the 1. But Kansas is having a little trouble punching it in. 2nd and goal, QB sneak. He's not in. Got to call the timeout. They've got 1 remaining. Down to 10 seconds left in the half now, 3rd and goal. Handoff for Daniel Highshaw, and he does not get it again. Middle Tennessee State holds. Kansas is going to wait for the 2-second mark, call their timeout. They've successfully converted 2 short 4th down conversions today. About 3rd time's the charm. Devin Neal up the middle. Superman dives into the end zone at the halftime buzzer for a KU touchdown. 21-0. Your score here at the break. It has been all Kansas here in the first half. Devin Neal with 2 touchdowns on the ground. Jalen Daniels with the other. I feel like the score isn't a perfectly accurate representation of this game, though. Every drive we've scored, we've had to go for it on 4th down. Middle Tennessee State's defense has not made it easy. Then on the other side of the ball, the Blue Raiders have moved it down the field well. Obviously, they had this play, which was originally called a touchdown. And I feel like that play being reversed, followed by the missed field goal, that led to a huge momentum boost for Kansas that Middle Tennessee State has not recovered from. 3rd and 2 to start the 3rd. It's a screen, and they don't get it. Caleb Purdy blows it up immediately. A quick stop on 3rd and short for the Jayhawks, and they'll get it right back on offense. Play action here for Daniels, looking to take a shot downfield. It's caught by Lawrence Arnold. Tries to juke away from the defender. He gets the first down to nearly the 50. Following play, it's a screen from Arnold. He's got blocks down the field. Get out of the way, Luke. He's got 1 man to beat, and he's in for a touchdown. A 53-yard score off the screen for Lawrence Arnold, and it's 28-0 Kansas as the Jayhawks add to their lead with a huge play after the catch by the senior wideout. The passing game has been remarkably efficient. Jalen Daniels has not had to throw it a ton today, but when he has, he is not missing passes. He's only thrown 1 incompletion up to this point, and now the Jayhawks really have a comfortable lead here early in the 3rd as they are up 28-0. Middle Tennessee State's got to get something going quick if they want to make it a game, but that won't help. Pleasant loses too. I believe that was Javier Derritt, the senior defensive tackle, who stops him in his tracks. 3rd and 8, short throw caught by Kellen Stewart, and he does not get much, maybe a yard or 2. Kobe Bryant is banged up after the play. That is not good news. The All-American first-team preseason Big 12 corner appears to be dinged up as Devin Neal loses yardage on 2nd down. Nice play there defensively by Middle Tennessee State. 3rd and 11. Daniels keeps it on the option, and they don't see it coming at all. Daniels down the field, slides it around the 30. He's got nearly 100 yards on the ground. They did not expect the run on 3rd and long. It's a screen now. It's caught by Luke Grimm. He is into the red zone at around the 10. This team continues to click on all cylinders here on both sides of the ball as Savion Morrison cannot punch it in on 3rd and goal, and Kansas is going to elect for the field goal. Owen Piper-Gerdes with the short kick from around 21. It is up and good. His first field goal of the year will make it a 31-0 lead for Kansas. With there being now just around a minute left in the 3rd quarter, I got to imagine Kansas is going to consider bringing in the backups pretty soon, including the freshman quarterback Isaiah Marshall. On 3rd down, Vasciato is sacked. The true freshman Dekias Brinkley leads the way off the edge on the right side. He's joined by Dylan Brooks as the two of them connect for half a sack. Kansas gets it back. Starting offense still in the game as Daniels fumbles it again. He's got to be more careful. Luckily, Savion Morrison was there to recover the ball, but he's now fumbled it twice today. Ball security, I imagine, is what the coaching staff is going to be preaching in practice this week. That's really been the only concern for this team today, because otherwise through 3 quarters it has been dominant. 3rd and short. They do get the first down with Savion Morrison as Devin Neal has already been subbed out of the game for the backup running backs. On 3rd down, Daniels has to throw out of the sack. So Middle Tennessee State is able to make the play, and that'll bring out the punt team looking to pin him back deep. But we've got a flag. Damon Greaves, the punter, took a shot after the play. That's going to be an unnecessary roughness, a roughing the punter on Jalen McKee, and it's an automatic first down. Kansas has not punted it all day. The one time they do, Middle Tennessee State still cannot get their defense off the field. 3rd and 3, Savion Morrison gets around 2. Kansas will bring the field goal team out here on 4th and 2. It's a 42-yarder for Owen Piper-Gerdes. And this one is no good. Just a tiny bit to the right, and it remains 31-0. Kansas has brought in the backups defensively. Middle Tennessee State has brought in some backups as well, including at quarterback with Luther Richson in as he connects with Donnell Wiley, who gets a huge play, gaining around 27, the longest offensive play for Middle Tennessee State all day. Richson on first down looks to throw it, and he's picked off. O.J. Burrows with the interception, and Kansas forces the turnover. Burrows is one of the few starters still in the game, and that's because I want to play him in a bunch of different positions this year, so I want to get him used to lining up at slot corner, lining up at sub linebacker, and he makes a huge turnover there as Kansas gets it back with the true freshman Isaiah Marshall in at quarterback. Marshall keeps it on the option. Down the field. His first run is a big one as he slides inside the 30 for a gain of 34. Kansas now has it on the 1 as it's 1st and goal. Marshall keeps it himself, walks it in. Quite the first drive for the true freshman Isaiah Marshall, and it's 38-0. On 2nd down, here is Richson. Under pressure, he is sacked. The true freshman Dekias Brinkley brings him down. He's got a sack and a half here in his collegiate debut. 3rd and long now for the Blue Raiders. Richson with no time to throw it, he's sacked again. What a first impression for the true freshman Dekias Brinkley, who has 2.5 sacks. I think it's pretty fair to say he's probably not going to be redshirted this year. This kid looks really impressive. Marshall will kneel out the clock, and that'll do it. 38-0, a dominant Week 1 victory here for the Kansas Jayhawks. No mercy here against Middle Tennessee State. I do feel like this game was pretty competitive for the first 15 or so minutes, but Middle Tennessee State just had too many circumstances not go their way, with the challenge working, calling back the touchdown, and then the missed field goal. From there, it just felt like Middle Tennessee State had too much going against them, and they never really were able to recover given how well we played, especially on offense. We ran the ball at a ridiculously high level, going for over 300 yards on the ground. And the defense, I get we started off slow on that side of the ball, but Middle Tennessee State did not score. We ended up with a shutout. We outgained then 525 yards to 177. We had 302 rushing yards while they had 8. Albeit, much of that was because of sacks. I personally hate how sacks count for rushing yards in college football, but what can you do? Dominant showing here from Kansas. We really controlled time of possession. We had it for 26 minutes. Jalen Daniels was really impressive. He was efficient in the air, and he was dynamic on the ground. 200 yards passing, 100 yards rushing, 3 all-purpose touchdowns. He did fumble it twice, though. Ball security's got to be better. Devin Neal, the big first half. I think this is probably going to be one of his lesser games of the year if all goes well. 4 catches for 101 and a touchdown for Lawrence Arnold. The offensive line was absolutely incredible. Daniels was under no pressure, and the run game was phenomenal. Got to give him a ton of credit. Zakious Brinkley led the way on defense, 2.5 sacks for the freshman. Coverage was good, pass rush was good, run defense was good. Special teams was a little questionable with the missed field goal, but other than that, pretty darn good. Nicholas Fasciato wasn't horrible. I feel like he wasn't really the reason why they lost. It was just a collection of the entire team just not being as good as us. That's what happens when you're going to play a lesser Group 5 team against a top 25 Power 4 team. So we take care of business there. We win our first game of the year. But let's go over some of the other notable games across the country. And we'll start things off in Atlanta. The Clemson Tigers look to shock the world as they face off against preseason number 1 Georgia, looking to win their 3rd national title over the last 4 years. I give Clemson a ton of credit. They made this a really competitive game. This touchdown by running back Phil Maffa, his second, tied it at 31 with 2 minutes to go, leading to a potential huge drive for the Georgia offense and possible first-round quarterback Carson Beck. His opportunity to show the world why he's going to be a star for a long time, and he did exactly that, driving his team down the field, throwing his 4th touchdown of the game, and the Georgia Bulldogs hold off Clemson 38-31 with this score by Bell. Really good game here to start the season, and again, if you're a Clemson fan, you really can't feel too bad about this, especially with the 12-team playoff. There's more margin for error, so you can win 9 games and still get a spot. Cade Klubnik played really well, but not quite as good as Carson Beck. 468 yards and 4 touchdowns. Beck enters the season as the top projected quarterback in the draft, and he certainly will not be hurting his stock with this performance today. Bell had a huge game, Lovett and Humphreys also scored. So let's check in on our friends down in Missouri. Obviously, the Tigers are one of our big rivals. They're playing an FCS team. This should be pretty easy for them. Or is it? This touchdown from FCS Southwest would ultimately put them ahead and beat Missouri 39-37. The Tigers lose their first game of the year to an FCS opponent. And since they're a rival, we get to celebrate. Racks on racks, smoking that Missouri pack. The Tigers dropped from number 10 all the way to outside the top 25 rankings. Certainly an embarrassing start to their season, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. Let's head to Gainesville. Florida versus Miami, one of the more fascinating games on the slate. These two teams have underperformed over the last couple of seasons. They're looking to start this year off right. The first half, though, was very one-sided. At halftime, the score was 27-0 in favor of Florida. Graham Mertz threw 4 touchdowns in the first half, and the Gators were dominating. But slowly but surely into the second half, Miami came back. Despite being down 34-7 going into the fourth quarter, they didn't quit. Cam Ward, the transfer from Washington State, did his best to lead the comeback effort. Down by 13, this score by Xavier Restrepo made it a one-score game, but unfortunately for the Canes, time ran out. It was too little too late, and the Gators survive. They win this one 34-28. I don't know if you should be excited or concerned being either one of these teams' fans, because in the first half, Florida was so good. Graham Mertz, 4 touchdowns. He looked excellent, but in the second half, Florida really struggled. Cameron Ward threw 4 scores after halftime to keep Miami in it. Florida's receivers were really good, though. Chimere Dike had 7 catches for 165, and Elijah Badger scored twice. Let's head down to Texas. The Longhorns, coming off a college football playoff berth, return home in a rainy one, facing off against the Colorado State Rams. This game ended up being a lot closer than one would have expected. Colorado State is no slouch, and they certainly showed that here today. This touchdown in the fourth quarter by C.J. Baxter ultimately put Texas over the top. They ended up winning 41-28, but they looked vulnerable in this game as they go into next week facing off against the defending champion Michigan Wolverines. Texas on offense, I will say, did play really well. Quinn Ewers threw for 5 touchdowns while incompleting just 5 passes. C.J. Baxter had a good game on the ground, but defensively, I felt like Texas lacked a little bit, and I'm worried that Michigan up front is going to trample their line, given that they struggled at times here with Colorado State. Let's look at another SEC team who made the playoff last year. The Alabama Crimson Tide. It's a new era for them. No more Nick Saban. Kalen DeBoer, now the head coach, coming over from Washington, and they kick off the DeBoer era against Western Kentucky. This was supposed to be a blowout. Problem was it was not. Tied at 17, late in the fourth, Western Kentucky would take the lead, but they would miss the extra point. So it's a 6-point game, and Alabama gets it back with a chance to win. They bring it all the way to the goal line here with just seconds to go. Here's Milroe for the win, and he's intercepted! Anthony Johnson picks it off in the end zone. The Hilltoppers come to Tuscaloosa and knock off the Tide. Milroe looks dazed and confused. The faces on the crowd tell you all you need to know. Western Kentucky upsets Alabama 23-17. Jalen Milroe comes into the year with Heisman hopes, and he's picked off twice. Now again, with the 12-team playoff, there's more margin for error. Alabama's season is far from over, but they've clearly got a lot of work to do with Nick Saban gone. Caden Veltkamp with a great game, throwing for 3 touchdowns, including the game winner, caught by the senior running back Elijah Young, as Western Kentucky shocks the college football landscape here in Week 1. Let's head down to Kyle Field as we have number 8 Notre Dame facing off against number 24 Texas A&M. It's a new era for the Aggies. Jimbo Fisher is gone, while Notre Dame starts the year in the top 10 with their new transfer at quarterback, Riley Leonard from Duke. This ended up being a really competitive game, but ultimately, Leonard had a really good performance, throwing for 2 touchdowns, both of which were caught by former Clemson receiver Bo Collins. Notre Dame beats the Aggies on the road 24-19. Overall, a pretty competitive game here as Notre Dame jumps up a spot, obviously passing Alabama. 2 touchdowns for Riley Leonard, leading the way for Notre Dame. Meanwhile, on the other side, Texas A&M quarterback Connor Wigman threw 3 interceptions. This is a kid who has a lot of upside, could be a high draft pick in the NFL this coming season or in the future, but he did not have a good performance today, and he's going to need to step it up if he wants to keep the Aggies afloat in the playoff hunt, while also keeping his draft stock afloat as well. Speaking of polarizing but athletically gifted quarterbacks, let's take a look at Drew Aller, leading Penn State as they go to Morgantown to face off against West Virginia. The Mountaineers actually led for most of this game, but a huge fourth quarter comeback from Aller, 2 late touchdowns, would ultimately propel Penn State to the come-from-behind win 31-30. Gotta hand this one to West Virginia. They really made this a challenge for the Penn State Nittany Lions, but they ultimately prevail, surviving with a big stretch in the fourth quarter, including 4 touchdowns for Drew Aller, 2 of which came in the final 3 minutes of this game. Really good performance by Aller, gutsy down the stretch. NFL scouts are going to like that a lot. As for West Virginia, Garrett Green up and down. 2 touchdowns, but he also threw 2 interceptions, including one pretty late that could have been prevented if not for a poor throw. C.J. Donaldson, the big back, had a big game on the ground, and Jaden Bray had a huge game in the air, but it was not enough to pull off the upset. Let's look at a rivalry game here. Arizona is expected to be one of the best teams in our conference this year, led by their dynamic offense. They're facing off against New Mexico, who lost to an FCS opponent last week, and clearly the Lobos had revenge on their mind, dropping a 50-burger on the Wildcats. Another shocking upset as New Mexico defeats Arizona 53-36, a 3-score win for New Mexico, both teams with over 500 yards of offense. Noah Fifita was really solid, but he threw 2 interceptions, certainly not ideal for the young sophomore quarterback. Arizona's offense was still really good, though. Wide receiver Tezitoya McMillan, a possible top 10 pick, was excellent, 7 for 148 and 2 touchdowns, but New Mexico's offense was unbelievable. Devin Dampier, the redshirt freshman, throws for 5 touchdowns in his starting debut for New Mexico State. He was awesome. The running back as well. Look at this. Andrew Henry, 8 carries for $133 and 2 scores. Arizona's offense was more than fine here, but their defense obviously has some questions to answer as they're going to be knocked out of the top 25 after an embarrassing performance at home against their rival. And the last game today, here in Allegiant Stadium, number 13 LSU against number 25 USC. This ended up being one of the most hyped games going into the weekend, and boy, did it not disappoint. Probably the best game of the weekend. So it was tied late with just a few minutes to go. LSU with the football. Garrett Nussmeier has already thrown 3 touchdowns in this game, looking to move the Tigers down the field, and ultimately they would take the lead with this incredible throw. And now USC's got to respond. On 3rd down with just seconds left, Moss looks downfield, but it's dropped. And the game comes down to a 4th down now at around the 30. Moss throws it up for his big target, Deuce Robinson, for the touchdown. When in doubt, throw it to the big guy. 35-34, and USC will go for 2 for the win. I love the aggressiveness and the gutsy call here by head coach Lincoln Riley, and ultimately, it would end up paying off. USC defeats LSU 36-35. What a game and what a finish. The Trojans jump up to number 19, while LSU only falls a few spots to number 17 with a great performance by Garrett Nussmeier. He was incredible. Another guy looking to really show NFL scouts what he can do. Miller Moss earned the starting job after a great performance in USC's bowl game last year, and he backed it up today with 430 yards and 4 touchdowns, including the game winner to the big fella, Deuce Robinson, the talented 2-sport athlete. Really good baseball player. I'm surprised he wasn't a really good basketball player as well with his 6'6" frame. He was the one with the game-winning touchdown, followed, of course, by the 2-point conversion by O'Neal to win it for the Trojans. An exciting week 1. USC defeats LSU, headlining some of the crazy games. Here's a look at some of the scores around the rest of college football. There weren't a ton of super notable surprises. Michigan takes care of business. Ohio State, Oregon, they all played against lesser opponents. They all won their games pretty easily. There were some FCS wins, a few upsets in there. Ole Miss only won by 10 against their FCS opponent. I think one of the bigger surprises that caught my eye was Old Dominion upsetting South Carolina 22-21. I have some hope this year for the Gamecocks, but losing at home to Old Dominion, not ideal. Let's now take a look at the top 25. With teams like Alabama and Missouri losing, we're obviously going to see a lot of changes. We jump all the way up to number 15 after our big win against Middle Tennessee State, while Washington, Auburn, Iowa, and Kentucky all enter the top 25. As for the players of the week, a guy who I've noticed is absolutely cracked in this game is Trayshawn Holden. He wins it on offense, while Blaine Toll takes it on defense. I was hoping Jalen Daniels would win the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week, but after seeing Sorsby stats, I kind of get it. As for the Heisman race, there's no change yet. I'm a little bit surprised Carson Beck didn't climb up from 5th, but the 4 players ahead of him all played well against inferior opponents, and I guess you can't really punish them for playing bad teams, but I imagine we're certainly going to get plenty of movement with the Heisman Watch over the next couple of weeks, and we've got some fun games across the country in week 2. Texas heads to the Big House to face off against Michigan. Tennessee hosts NC State. Look out for the Wolfpack as a sleeper in the ACC. Iowa State and Iowa, big rivalry. And then, of course, we're headed to Champaign, facing off against the Fighting Illini in what should be a pretty challenging game. Illinois is no slouch, especially being on the road. That's going to be a tough one. Hope everybody enjoyed the episode. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out. Rock Chalk.